Then another question I asked her, this was super fun. This is one of my favorite questions I asked her. What questions have you pondered throughout the course of your 5-decade leadership journey? And I ask you, in your maybe 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades leadership journey, what are some of the questions that you have pondered over the course of your leadership journey? Welcome to the EQ Gangster podcast, where you will learn practical tools to grow your mental and emotional health and intelligence to be the best version of yourself, both at work and at home. It is real, raw, and transformational. The journey of emotional growth isn't easy, but it's worth it. I believe in you. What is going on, EQ Gangsters? Hope y'all are doing amazing. Super stoked. This is going to be some insights, this episode, insights from my recent interview with Dr. Margaret Heffernan. Dr. Margaret Heffernan. She started out in the BBC, that worked her way up, and then from there started and founded like a couple tech companies, sold them, and now is a mentor and coach to global CEOs. And she's written 6 books. I heard her speak at one of the organizations that I've gotten certified in or from regarding emotional intelligence and DISC, the personality assessments and stuff. They host a conference every year, and she was one of the keynote speakers. And I'm like, this lady is fire. She's probably, I don't know how old she is, maybe 60s, 70s, and just dropping all kinds of skinny. So this is going to be kind of like the prep episode leading up to the next episode, which is going to be the actual interview. So I'm just giving you, this is like the teaser, this is the trailer, so to speak, of that interview. Now, I will tell you, for those of y'all that are watching on YouTube and watch that specific episode on YouTube with Dr. Margaret Heffernan, you will notice, I don't remember exactly when, like maybe 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, somewhere in there, you're going to notice the background change for both of us. Because the first time I interviewed her, halfway through the interview, like Zoom started to freak out, and which is where I do all my interviews from. And so Zoom starts to trip, and it wouldn't stop. It would just like keep on. And she lives in the UK, United Kingdom. So I'm like, and I was like, oh, and she's like this big cheese. So I'm like, ma'am, I'm so sorry. So anyway, I had to restart my whole computer, take a bunch of time. Anyway, so I hit her EA, her executive assistant, up. I said, hey, any chance that she'd be willing to reschedule the rest of the interview on another day? And she's like, absolutely. She loved the first part, so she's totally cool with that. So anyway, that's when you notice that there's an editing change in the backgrounds. That's what happened. But I started off the second interview with the same question that we started to skip on the first interview. Anyway, if you're just doing the podcast, you won't notice anything. But if you're watching on YouTube, you will see a difference. So I want to just share some of the questions and maybe some of the answers that she shared with me. She has some really insightful comments and thoughts here. So I asked her, one of the initial questions was, how did you start your journey to becoming a world-class leader? And she had some really interesting insights there. I also asked her, what did you discover about creating the type of environment that would bring the best out of leaders? And so here's my challenge for you all is, how would you answer these questions? How would you answer these questions? If I was interviewing you, what would be some of your thoughts to these questions? So one of the things that she shared, so she just got done also teaching, or right before I interviewed her the first time, and it's only a couple weeks apart, I think, between the first and the second interview. First half of the interview, second half of the interview, she had just finished teaching like a master's level course, or a course to master's students, MBA students. I don't know how long the course was, but she did a portion of the MBA program on leadership or business or something. And one of the exercises was some sort of like like a role play of how. So boom, you meet, you're at a networking event, or and you meet an executive, another C-level executive. For, I'm making some of this up because it's something like this, and you have to network with this executive, and you are a consultant, business consultant. You talk to a CEO that could be, or a C-level executive that could be potentially be a client. How would you how would that conversation go? And fascinating her insights and her observations in this MBA class were fascinating, because she said, and I'm gonna let you hear her insights in the episode. She said, MBA students, these are people that are not, they're not fresh out of college. This is not their first experience in business or college, right? A lot of them were already, kind of experienced in business, and they were kind of furthering their business progression by getting their MBA. And she said she was very shocked by their responses, or how they did in this role play, which was really, really fascinating. And so then I asked, well, I'll save that question. You guys will hear that during the actual interview. Then I said, what are some of the areas you've observed senior leaders needing to change in? That was an interesting question. Then I asked, how can a leader develop radical curiosity, which is, at some point, I would love to write a book about that, because that is a passion of mine. I also asked, how can a leader develop the social capital within an organization? That was a really good, she had some really good responses to that. What type of leaders do you enjoy working with the most? And I would ask you all, again, all these questions I would love to ask all of my listeners and viewers. What kind of leaders do you enjoy working the most with, both above you and below you and side to side? It's another great question. I love asking leaders. There's another question. What have you observed being the primary difference between a good leader and a world-class leader? Okay, this is a fun one. This is the first time I've ever asked someone this question. I said, okay, if I am one of your senior executives, I'm one of the global CEOs that you work with, and we're meeting for the first time, what question or questions would you ask me to find out where I am at in my leadership journey or leadership arc? And that was kind of fun, because I've never asked that before. And, she had kind of observed some of that dynamic with her MBA class. So I'm like, okay, well, how would you do it since you're the big cheese? And so then another question I asked her, this was super fun. This is one of my favorite questions I asked her. What questions have you pondered throughout the course of your 5-decade leadership journey? And I ask you, in your maybe 1 decade, 2 decades, 3 decades leadership journey, what are some of the questions that you have pondered over the course of your leadership journey? So anyway, I asked her some more questions there. I'll save those. You all can listen to the episode, but strongly encourage you to check it out. Even if you got to listen to it, a couple, like, let's say you've got a 20-minute commute to work. It's an hour episode. It's worth listening to the whole thing. I'm telling you, she has such great insights in Skinny, and you will not regret listening to that episode. And again, her name is Dr. Margaret Heffernan, and so I will be sure to include all the details, contact information, website, books, and stuff on the show notes. Maybe not this episode, but for sure on that following episode where she is actually, where we're having the actual conversation. So thank you for being a part of the journey. Thank you for rating and reviewing. Thank you for subscribing and sharing any episode that you feel has been really impactful to you. We had an awesome EQ Mafia tonight too, by the way, where we talked about, maybe I'll include this in another episode, but we talked about emotional forecasting, which I did a LinkedIn episode or LinkedIn post on this, and then also pre-loading your decision making. And I may even make that a whole separate. I may pull out that portion of the EQ Mafia and actually share that with you all as well. Big shout out to our sponsors, classicalconversations.com/Gibbons, Gibbens. If you are at all interested or thinking about homeschooling, check out that link, classicalconversations.com/Gibbons, Gibbens, to get some more skinny on homeschooling. We're living in some crazy times, y'all, and now would be a great time to check out homeschooling. So classicalconversations.com/Gibbons. This episode is sponsored by Classical Conversations. Since 1997, Classical Conversations has been equipping families like yours with the resources to homeschool with confidence, following a classical curriculum rooted in a Christ-centered worldview alongside other families in a local community. Homeschooling is doable with Classical Conversations. Check out classicalconversations.com/Gibbons for more information. Again, that's classicalconversations.com/Gibbons, Gibbens.